I think many of you are aware that I just recently lost my mom. After many, many years of battling with Alzheimer's, my mom passed away just a couple weeks ago. And there's been such an outpouring of support. It's been a wonderful blessing for me, and it's a part of what we are able to feel and sense as a part of a church, is that we have this other family of faith that's going to be there to hold us up and to comfort us. And so it really has been a time of great comfort. But as I thought about this, I thought, it's always difficult to lose someone we love. I think it's especially difficult perhaps to lose a parent. And when you do lose a parent, there is that sense of extreme loss. But for me, I lost my mom years before this because Alzheimer's had taken away her ability to communicate with us. And so when she did finally pass, there really was for me a sense of relief that she's no longer being plagued by this terrible disease. But it was also a time where I found myself sitting and thinking about all the many memorial services that I've done. You see, I've done a lot of memorial services for other people's families, and I haven't had too many really close losses in my own family as a pastor. And so when this happened, I found myself really reflecting on the things that I had said to other family members, as well as things I said in memorial services. And it made me be reminded of this passage that comes to us from John chapter 14. I've read this in almost every memorial service I've done. Right at the end of Jesus' life, he's gathering his disciples and he says this. He says, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many dwelling places. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go and prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and I will take you to myself, so that where I am, there you may be also. And you know the way to the place where I am going." Thomas, one of the disciples, said to him, "Lord, we do not know where you're going. How can we know the way?" Jesus said to him, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." Again, for me, those words have always been words of hope, and I hope as I read those passages that they've been words of hope for those family members as well. But I often talk about how I find myself in the same place that Thomas is. And I mentioned this a lot of times in memorial services, that, Thomas's question, "Lord, we don't know where you're going, how can we know the way?" is really that question of faith that I think all of us have, and maybe all of us struggle with, especially around the time of death. We know and we have faith, but at the same time we don't know. And at the same time, we still struggle with that. And so as I was reflecting on this myself, I found myself saying, "You know what, Lord, I really need to have confidence. I really need somehow to have confidence that you are in fact the way, and that you do in fact give us hope in this time of hoping for the resurrection." So two things happened to me in response to that prayer. And before I tell you those two things that happened to me, I got to tell you one other quick thing. Melanie and I always have this little debate among us. We call it the debate about the parking lot God. You see, when we're driving through a parking lot and we're stressed out and we're trying to find a place to park, Melanie will always say to us when we find a parking lot, "Oh, God has helped us find this parking lot." And I always think, God really has a lot more to do than making sure I get a parking place. But it's just our little theological debate. So I say that because I'm one of these kind of people that really truly believes that God is always there and present with us, but I'm not always looking for those particular signs where God communicates to me exactly what I need. I mean, I think God does, but I think a lot of times there's a lot of things that God's trying to do, and maybe some of these little things aren't as big. That said, here's what happened. I found out that my mom passed away as we were driving to take Melanie to the airport to visit her mother. And as we were driving, my sister called me and interrupted the song that I was listening to on the radio at the time. We had a CD in. And when when I finished the conversation with my sister and she told me about my mom's death, when I had finished that conversation, the radio came back on. And the song that was on was by an artist by the name of Amos Lee. And the song is called Worry No More. And the words went like this: worry no more, there's an open door for you. And I gotta tell you, I thought about this and I thought, I think God's trying to tell me something. I think there's a message here that there is a new open door for my mother in this time of loss. But here's the thing. The next day, Sunday morning, I'm getting ready for church and I open up my Bible app, which is something I try to do every single day. And the memory verse for that day came out of John chapter 11. And it was a time when Jesus is talking to Martha after the death of her brother Lazarus. And Jesus says this to her after Martha said, if you would have been here, my brother would not have died. Jesus said this to her. He said, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? That was the Bible verse on my Bible app the very next day after my mother died. And that question that Jesus asked Martha was the question that Jesus was asking me. God is with us in life and in death. And sometimes when we are struggling, God provides those moments where we can receive confidence. That's what God did for me right after my mom died. And I'm grateful for it. Look for those signs yourself.